Joy, I'm going to bring you up over here a little bit. Let me just start one thing. For those who are listening from Indonesia, Southeast Asia, they know what a yayasan is. But for those who are probably listening later on when they wake up from the US or West, what is a yayasan, Joy?
It's basically the equivalent of nonprofit organization in Indonesia. So if you register as a yayasan, everyone will understand you're a nonprofit. You could be a religious yayasan under the Ministry of Religion, or a social yayasan, which is under the Ministry of Social Affairs.
Yeah, very good. Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about YICF and all of the stuff that you all are doing right now. But before you do, let me ask you a quick question. How did a girl from Baylor University end up in Jakarta?
Well, I'm not even really from Baylor. I went there for grad school, just 2 years briefly, but I'm Korean American, and I grew up overseas as a child of missionaries in Mongolia. Ended up at Calvin College in Michigan, and spent 7 years living and working there in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I would say that's more of where I'm from. But yeah, I ended up coming to Jakarta because my husband is Indonesian, met him at Calvin College as freshman. And while I was at Baylor University for my grad school doing my MBA, we decided to aim at getting married here and settling down in Jakarta. So after grad school, I moved over to Indonesia in 2014.
Very, very good. Your parents, are they still in Mongolia now?
No, they're based in Thailand, just moved in because of the pandemic. It was a delay. They're in international leadership with Worldwide Evangelization for Christ, another mission agency. Yeah.
Joy, and before we talk about YCF, what is home for you? What would you say is home for you?
Home is wherever I am. Wherever I am planted, you can make it home. So, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were like, aren't you leaving? The US Embassy is telling all the Americans to leave. And I'm like, why would I leave? Because I live here.
Yes.
So yeah, that's my mentality, is wherever I am, that's where I live.
When you were at Calvin College and then later on you went for your MBA over at Baylor, what was your original plan and how did you end up at YICF?
So when I was at Calvin, I was majoring in international relations, political science, and development studies. Really thought I'd end up working with an organization like the UN and go into the humanitarian field. But towards the end of my studies, I ended up interning and then working for an interchurch organization. And then ended up working 6 years actually remotely with global interchurch organizations that gathered Christian leaders at the global level, with something called the Global Christian Forum. And that just opened up my eyes to a whole new world, and got me, into very interesting conversations about missions, about persecution and all of that, and made me more aware of global issues. But after being at the global level, once I moved to Indonesia, I felt that I'm called to be in Asia more and to be have a more local impact. And so I actually kind of retired from global work after about a year after we got married, and then joined a Christian business school here, and used my MBA to teach for 2.5 years. And I just loved it. Loved working with young people who are trying to find their place in the world, many of them from a family business background. And then just started getting introduced to the startup scene here, and loved seeing how there's such a thirst for social impact, and decided to jump into it when I heard about a need for an executive director for YICF, our current organization. And I heard about it through church, just heard about the work that was being done and the need for a first full-time director.
Yep.
So we jumped into this 2018.
YICF is a Yayasan in English, Light of Dawn International in Indonesia. But tell me a little bit about the work of YICF.
Yeah, so we don't really use our English name, we just call ourselves YICF. YICF was started in 2015 by different groups of believers in our main partner church community, Jakarta International Christian Fellowship, a non-denominational international church here. Different groups of believers in the congregation were engaging, building relationships with different groups of underserved communities in Jakarta. and just responding to needs, mainly educational needs. So there are these different programs and ministries being started, and they needed a nonprofit home outside of the church structure to keep growing. And the work started involving non-Christians as well. And so YICF established was in 2015 to serve that purpose. So our current work right now, our mission is to help people experience and share the joy of learning, the dignity of vocation, and strength through community. Through three main programs, we serve over 500 children all the way up through adults of all ages, primarily through educational and vocational programs, including serving refugees living in Jakarta, Indonesia. So I don't know, do you want me to sketch out the three main programs that we have?
Yeah, I would love to hear that. Please do.
Yeah, so our main kind of public program that most people in Jakarta know about is Roshan Learning Center. Roshan is our refugee education program that serves almost 200 refugees of all ages through mainly informal educational activities, but increasingly connecting them to formal education opportunities. And it's a very community-driven initiative where refugees, Indonesians, and foreign nationals all work side by side to make sure refugees in Indonesia have access to education, because many of them don't have access to public education options while they're waiting here to be resettled in another country. Just to let you know, there's about 14,000 refugees in Indonesia at the moment, and most of them never expected to be here or to be stuck here for 7, 8, 9, 10 years without any right to work or study.
Now, random question, Joy, where are these refugees from?
Most of them, like over 50% of refugees in Indonesia are from Afghanistan. And the rest are from over 40 countries, including Pakistan, Yemen, Sri Lanka, as far as Somalia as well. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And then there's Roshan. What about the other two?
Yep. So the other program, Life, is our program serving children of waste pickers out at Bantar Gebang, one of the largest landfills in the world, right outside of Jakarta. That's where all of our trash goes. And there are about 7,000 people living and working at the dump, basically our recycling system here. And we have a full team of about 10 full-time Indonesian, young adult Indonesians living and serving and working out at the dump across 6 different program sites, running morning preschool activities, after-school tutoring, and now university scholarships, because many of them, or more of them, are starting to choose to go into higher education, which was unheard of about 10 years ago the ministry started. So that's a really powerful ministry that started before even YCF, and we support and provide different organizational support that they need to keep growing the ministry. Then the third program, the newest one that started in 2019, is totally different. It's a data labeling program where we partner with AI companies to build and manage a workforce of unemployed young adult Indonesians and refugees, and connecting them basically to very accessible digital work. And we work hand in hand with global companies to make that possible for them. And so we're basically operating almost like a social enterprise in this program. And this program is called Bersama.
Got it. And Bersama is the one that I've gotten involved with and gotten a chance to teach and speak to some of the groups there, and gotten to know some of those guys there and heard the story of some of the refugees there. So, but Joy, let me ask you a quick question. Is the hope that by creating Bersama, it creates revenue that gives them a job, but also supports some of your programs over at Roshan and all of that?
Yeah, it has, but we're still thinking through all of that, how it all fits together, because you do need to run it as an enterprise properly to meet that goal. So it has definitely contributed some extra funding to our overall operations of YCF in a way that we didn't expect when we launched this program very rapidly with one of our main corporate partners. But now we are praying and preparing for it to be moved out to an enterprise structure that would be owned by YCF and maybe a like-minded investor, so that it can continue to grow and supply work to people who really need it. But at the same time, maybe one day, if it really is profitable, then supporting our nonprofit activities. But we are pivoting that whole thing towards not just digital work. As we prayed more about it and did a lot of soul searching, we believe it needs to expand to other vocational tracks, even trying to make work more accessible to blue collar types of workers. So we're praying about how to do that and the right CEO to come along and help us do it.
Yeah. Hey, now, Joy, you and I have gotten to know each other really well. You're very entrepreneurial spirit. What part of the job do you enjoy doing? Do you like coming up with the ideas? Do you like scaling it? Do you like building it? What resonates with you?
Number one thing, partnerships. That is just the one thing I guess I was able to bring to YCF. I don't have, this is my first time being a director, actually. I jumped from not even managing to just being a director. But the one thing I knew how to do is just use networks, relationships that I have from whatever business school or even my interchurch organizational years, whatever relationships there are. I believe all of it can be channeled to do good works. And so just inviting people to work alongside with us with their company or their organization, their church community, and putting the work into setting it up right. I think a lot of partnership opportunities get lost because there's not enough work into aligning interests and making sure everyone understands what they're trying to get out of it and what they're trying to achieve. But I really enjoy building fruitful partnerships.
And with the partnerships, a lot of times you and I work with a lot of different Christian ministries. The standard word is always, let's partner together. And it stops there, right? And now at the same time, you're going to have to figure out what those partnerships look like. How have you figured out what to make? If somebody says to you, Joy, let's partner together, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it's a matter of just clarifying, well, what's your interest? What's God calling? If they're believers, what's God really placing on your heart? And just sharing, okay, this is what we're doing. Of what you hear us doing, what resonates most with you. It might be the vocational side of things. It might be the educational side of things. It might be volunteering, or it might be financial partnership that grows into other things too. Yeah. So it's with each partner and relationship, the work is really understanding what's on their heart, and then whether there is a real fit. Sometimes there is no fit. And even though we might have similar direction and it looks on paper like we could do something together, the more you dig into it, maybe there's not enough capacity on one side, there's not clarity on one side. So there are some details that need to be worked out in all of those conversations.
Yep. And for those who are listening in, a lot of times partnerships are really, really special. And sometimes if you could get something done, you could probably get more done working together than doing it alone. But as Joy says, sometimes in the midst of discussion, and you're going to have honest conversations that benefit both parties, partnerships just can't be done. And it's okay. You've tried it, but sometimes it just won't get done as well too. Yeah. Hey, talk about one partnership that you've worked with that has worked well for you, and what happened during that partnership.
I think what we're starting to do more intentionally. So we started with one main church partnership with JICF because JICF was the main supporter. Yep. But starting to, because I worked with interchurch organizations, I have the habit of thinking, how do you involve more churches and bring them to the table? And so we started to just approach one or two other English-speaking churches that were already personally kind of connected to our work, either through volunteers or through different networks. And we worked in the last 2 years, we built partnerships with IES, another English speaking church, and CCC, a church where there are many young professionals who have a hunger for social impact and learning how to do that. But what I love is it wasn't just financial partnership that we started with, we did, sit down with their mercy ministry or their mission directors or committees and said, okay, you can start by supporting these specific needs financially, but then just making sure we do update calls and just listening. Okay, what are you working on as a church? What is God calling your missions arm or your mercy ministry side to focus on? What are you being drawn to? And then maybe that overlaps with what YCF is being drawn to.
Yeah.
So like recently, with CCC, their mercy ministry coordinator, she's a new person in that position, but she comes from a corporate background, having worked with one of the largest startups here. And we have a small social enterprise project where we sell coffee to raise funds for our Roshan Learning Center. And there's a refugee intern running that project, but needs someone to come alongside. And she prayed about it and was like, you know what, aside from, being the mercy ministry contact, I'm going to set aside time to really mentor that young man and work at a very detailed level with that one specific project we have. And I think it's a small thing, but it's very meaningful because there's a personal relationship built between the church partner and someone that's directly impacted by the work.
One of the things I'm hearing from you is you're understanding what that partnership is. You're very direct about what your needs are, financial, but also in terms of volunteer help, all of that. But you're also listening to them. What are your priorities? Because they probably have their own set of priorities. What are the things that you want to accomplish? Can what we're doing fit into your priorities? And then from that point on, you're trying to find ways, not only just to ask them for money, but create ownership in it, which makes a perfect partnership in a lot of the things that you're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's great if we even say, this year, the financial piece is not important, or it's relevant. I mean, during the pandemic, I know churches were hit hard. And so we were openly communicating, if your church has been hit hard, no, feel free to drop the support or make adjustments. We'll make it work because it's teamwork. We'll do what we need to do to make it possible for you to continue giving, but at a level that's manageable. And I think that's the way to go about that.
Yeah. Joy, we don't have too much time left, but let me just say this. How have you, or question is, when you were in, whether it's Grand Rapids or when you talk with your friends over at Baylor and all that other stuff, do they understand Indonesia? Do they understand, or is there a lot of awareness that you need to help them understand what's going on in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think outside of Indonesia, many people don't. People know about Bali, but they don't realize even that that's in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Or there's this impression, I think, especially among believers, that Indonesia is just fully Muslim. It's one of the largest Muslim countries in the world. But actually, people might not realize that there are 6 officially recognized religions, including Christianity and Catholicism. There is a very influential population of Christians. Yeah. It's a small population, but very influential in this country economically. And I think that's very unique about Indonesia, and especially Jakarta, where you kind of go higher up in the rungs of society and you start seeing Christians everywhere, and with so much potential to harness those positions and power for good.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. How has your MBA, like for instance, one of the things I'm so very impressed about is, for you, as much as you say you've retired from the global business, you are a global leader because you operate in both worlds. You do understand the American Western way of doing businesses because of your business training and your undergrad training, but you're also learning the ways of yayasans in Indonesia, all of that stuff. How have you merged the two together?
It's as simple, like it goes down to the practical level. For example, working really hard with our accountant, who's an Indonesian corporate accountant, and being like, this is how nonprofit accounting works from my perspective. Yeah. And learning the Indonesian way, but realizing that might not be rigorous enough to meet the standards expected by international donors. And so basically creating systems where there are none, and bringing a little bit of what I've learned from working with Western nonprofits and bringing some best practices in here, but then adapting it to the local context. Even, receiving donations, you can't just put up a Donately page and just link it easily to your bank. The banking system's totally different. Payments are totally different here. So discovering workarounds and all kinds of ways. And giving culture here is also totally different. Philanthropy is very different. So there are times when, if I'm talking with an Asian donor, I think and speak more like an Asian, much more relationally, but with jumping in a call with a Western donor than just putting that hat on. So it's more and more, and building a team that can think in those different ways. So I love working with one of my closest colleagues, Joyce. She's an Indonesian who spent 20 years overseas in the States, came back, but understands both worlds too, and has worked with people in different sectors. So yeah, it comes down to the team and the way our willingness to be creative.
Well, it's a unique world that you live in, right? You have a unique set of skills that a lot of people, you can understand where the Western world is coming from, all the rigors of being a nonprofit, all the things that you need to do, but you're also able to understand things in the Asian context also. Now, do you find with YICF, are you still supported mostly by the West, or is it more and more you're growing in awareness in terms of being supported locally?
We're about, if you look at us as a whole, we're about 60% Western funded or non-Indonesian funded, and then about 40% locally. But each program under us, because we have kind of different funding streams for each, looks very different. For example, our life ministry is probably 80 to 90% local or increasingly locally funded. It resonates more. With refugee work, you hit more of an expat type of crowd here, and so you're going to get international donors more involved. So it varies across the board.
And the reason, folks, for those who are listening to all this is a very key thing that I want Joyce to understand, or want you guys to understand what Joy is doing, is the world of the donors internationally is growing more and more. Philanthropy is growing more and more. And so I think a lot of times, not only is the West, the leaders, that was the perception back in the days, which is not true, but also it was always believed that the West funds everything that happens. And that also is not true. How do we grow in partnership where all of us are learning to communicate? All of us are learning to come alongside and partner, whether it's in volunteers, but also funding. I love what YICF is doing. You guys are the standard, in my opinion, of how that looks like future-wise. You still need the help of the Western world. You still need outside help, but you're also asking for the locals to own it and come alongside with it. But yet you need a person like yourself who knows how to balance both worlds.
Yeah, and I think local is local in Jakarta is international already. It's a cosmopolitan city. And so local could be foreigners who have been living here 20, 30 years and think more local. So I think local and global is changing those definitions. But definitely we're trying to challenge the assumption that, overseas donors need to fund everything. And even when it comes to, for example, mobilizing workers, we've tried something new with a church out in California where somebody was being sent out to work with us. We just said, this person has great qualifications in education to work with us, but we don't want to go the traditional route of waiting two years maybe for that person to join a mission agency, a Western mission agency, and then to raise a ridiculous amount of money to come out, and a big portion of it going out to administration and all of that. We said, what if we just go direct? Let's create a model that might work for future people or future partnerships with other churches, local churches in the States, where there are young people that want to join us but don't want to wait so long to head out to the field, right? And so we came up with more local support we could provide according to local kind of our local resources, and pitched in, while the partner church also pitched in, so that it works for the person coming out here. And we looked at everything that traditional mission agencies these days require for people to go out to the field, and a lot of it I was like, you don't need a lot of that. Honestly, I don't even have that, and I live here fine. So let's just be practical. Let's bring Asian pragmatism back to the table and make it make it more manageable so people can go out faster.
Yeah.
And it worked, and everyone's happy, and we'll try it again with future people if they're willing to be a little unconventional.
How long has that person been on the ground in Indonesia?
Just got here. She's now been here about 2 months. Took a while with the visa process, but we went the proper way of getting a work permit, so that she's really on staff with us with the yayasan.
We're running out of time. Look, I love that motto. We're going to have to dig more deeper into that motto in the future, because I want to follow that journey of what that looks like. And a lot of what you said is correct. And I think keep watch for those who are listening, keep watching YICF, because they do things in unconventional ways. They do things in a very creative ways. And I love Joy because she's always thinking outside the box. Joy, if people could want to follow you, where can they find more information about you and YICF?
We just revamped our website, so we'll try to be a bit more updated there, ycf.org, www.ycf.org, or folks can reach out to us through the contact form if you want to follow us more closely. We do have some communication we put out to faith-based partners. We'll do that more next year. So you could just send us an email and say, hey, I heard about you through Global Church Forum, and I'd like to stay in touch at a deeper level, and we can talk then. Yeah.
You got it. Joy, thank you very much. Melissa, I'm going to bring you back on. And look, Joy, I was very, very inspired by your conversation. And I am very interested, especially following that journey of how that young lady comes and some of your unconventional ways of bringing in people in, because I would probably say I will tend to agree with you is I see the importance of missions agencies, but you're bringing that, and 18% of it goes to administrative fee. I totally get it. And we got to look at different ways to do it. And I don't want to be accused of not encouraging global missions, but there has to be some more cost-effective ways to doing these things.
Yeah. All ways are good. It's just not always, not one way fits everyone. And so we have to have a multiplicity of options. But yeah, I just want to throw out there, Global Church, Resource Global has been a huge part of making YCF a success. So I do want to thank you, Tommy, too, for the network that you've opened up to people like me here in Jakarta through the Ministry of Resource Global and things like this, like the Global Church Forum. So really appreciate it.
Well, and Melissa, you're part of the Singapore cohort, and Joy, you were part of the, my hope and dream when I first started Resource Global was that Tommy Lee, if he wanted to do something in Jakarta, in Singapore, probably wouldn't be very effective from a guy who lives in Chicago. And as much as I try, I probably could directly influence maybe a couple of hundred people in my lifetime, whatever it is. But man, what Joy is doing for refugees and what Joy is doing to creating sustainable work is more than I could ever do in her context. And so if I could find the resources or the people to come alongside Joy to take what she's doing, will we not continue to grow the gospel to the ends of the earth? And that was my dream as well, too. And Melissa, here I am just meeting her for the very first time officially tonight. And so as I follow her journey, how do we give all of our different resources from around the world to encourage her on her journey? And that really became my calling for my life, to allow myself to take all of these different networks and come alongside different people and encourage them.
Cannot agree more. I think everyone who's watching this forum right now would agree with me that we've learned so much. We've learned so much over the last 3 speakers, in fact. I think 2 from Singapore and now Joy from Indonesia. Just engaging different cultures. I think that was the common theme that we see, different generation. And I think Joy, you really brought it home with the social enterprise, social impact, and having empathy at the end of the day, in understanding the worldviews, between Western and Eastern. So I think we could go on and on for hours on this forum. But at this stage, I think we do have a breakout session really to just digest all that we have heard. There is a pair up app that we really encourage everyone to download. I've jumped on it. There's actually prompts that actually ask you questions and you can answer it. Really sit down and just, type away, have a coffee and do it. I think I've thoroughly enjoyed this whole session. I really want to thank Tommy and Joy for taking us through an exciting time. And yeah, so I'll hand it back to the host, and we'll jump onto the breakout session. Thank you
before
very
you
much.
do, Simon and Kent, before we turn it on, Melissa, this is your last time with us. You're gonna roll off. We're gonna get T from Nairobi to come on and host the rest of our time over there. But Joy, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, Melissa. We're gonna both of you guys. We're gonna have to get together soon. And Melissa, I look forward to meeting you in person as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.